That's just the fact of the matter. And that it is what it is. But all right, we're gonna go ahead and get a word in from our partner Kaushi, and then we're gonna go ahead and get into our let's see what's going on over there in Cuba. But all right, guys, be right back. Yo, this is Set with Set Media, man. I'm here to talk to you about our partner, Kalshi. Kalshi is the largest legal prediction market in the United States with over 1 million users. It's available in all 50 states. They are a real money market, people trading on what they think will happen. You can build a position and trade in and out of almost any prediction you think. Kalshi facilitates trade between people kind of like the stock market. There's no limiting your trades just because you're winning. Kalshi will pay you interest on your position. So if you make a long-term trade, you can earn a return even before the market is resolved. If you want to try out Kalshi, go ahead and give them a try, guys, at my link, kalshi.com/setmedia. Get $20 when you trade 20, so it's 20 for 20, guys. Once again, that's kalshi.com/setmedia. Go ahead and use my code setmedia to get $20 when you trade 20. Let's go ahead and take a look here at Kalshi, because like I said, it is a trading market where you can put in your prediction and you can go ahead and earn interest on that. You can make money off the knowledge that you know, and if you put $20 in, you get $20 back. So all right, guys, make sure to go check out my guy at Kalshi, because you can get in on good trades like who will Trump nominate as Fed chair? Will Ali Khamenei be outed as the supreme leader? And will the U.S. confirm that aliens exist before 2027? So if you want to get in on this action, once again, go ahead and go to my partners at Kalshi. Go ahead and use the link, or you can hit the QR code above and use Set Media to go ahead and get $20 when you trade 20. This is Set from Set Media, and shout out to Kalshi. And all right, guys, let's go ahead and get right into it with Cuba. All right, and let's go ahead and start off with CNN.
A deadly incident off the coast of Cuba. Officials in Cuba say border guard troops shot and killed 4 people on a speedboat in Cuban waters who were trying to, quote, infiltrate the island nation on Wednesday. The Cuban Interior Ministry says the boat was registered in Florida and was carrying Cubans who live in the United States. One of the passengers allegedly opened fire on the border guard troops. 6 other people aboard the speedboat were wounded in the shootout and are receiving medical care while being held in custody. We've got CNN Stefano Pozzebon following the story for us. Stefano, good to see you. What do we know about this investigation? What transpired in this incident?
Well, unfortunately, we don't know much, and everything we know is directly from the Cuban government. So, of course, we need to take it with a little bit of caution. However, we do know that the incident took place at the northernmost tip of the Cuban coast, the part of the island of Cuba that is closest to Florida. This closest to both Miami, the Miami community of anti-Cuban hotbed, frankly, and the Cuban Keys, which is...
And this is all coming from the Cuban Ministry of the Interior. It said that Florida registered speedboat entered Cuban waters about 1 mile off Cuba's north coast and opened fire, which is crazy, by the way, killing 4 and detaining 6. Cuba's government said that 10 passengers were armed Cubans living in the U.S. and who tried to infiltrate the island to unleash terrorism. Well, I mean, I wonder what grounds are going off of. What, did they get the communications? How did they know that there was a whole bunch of terrorists on that boat? But hold on, wait, they opened fire. So, yeah, it is what it is.
The peninsula, that line of archipelago that drives south.
I don't know, something about this, something about it kind of screams false flag, but maybe that's just me being overly cautious.
From the continental United States towards Cuba in South Florida. We know that 6 people have been so far apprehended by the Cuban government. The Cuban government and the Interior Ministry in particular have told us that 1 more person have been apprehended for flying into Cuba to organize the reception of what they're saying was a tripulation of terrorists. These 6 people, together with the 4 that have been killed in the standoff on Wednesday, are now accused of terrorism and trying to infiltrate the country, Cuba, in to stem a rebellion, to stem social disorder. We know that the Americans have called.
Oh, and shout out Toe. She says, congratulations on the sponsor. Said, hey, appreciate you, Toe, for starting me off and for congratulating me on the sponsor. Yo, make sure you guys sign up for, Couchy. Go ahead and leave that little deal right there for you.
For a thorough investigation and for clarifying all the facts, in particular, not just the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, but also the Florida Attorney General, who is appointed by the Republicans, but also the mayor of Miami, who is a Democratic politician, but still called to take everything coming out of Cuba with a pinch of salt, and asking for American U.S. investigators to clarify all the facts, especially if they link to the Southern Florida community, to people in Miami, where we know that a change of government has been demanded when it comes to Cuba for more than 60 years. But this has the potential, Eleni, to rapidly escalate into the most serious geopolitical crisis of the year so far, especially after the removal of Nicolas Maduro down in Venezuela. It's a situation that we're monitoring very, very quickly, very, very closely, because it could escalate very quickly, Elena.
Sure can.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I want to talk about the current economic realities facing people in Cuba right now. Lifeline was.
They're going through a fuel crisis right now because Mexico cut off the oil from there. We cut off the oil they were getting from Venezuela, and I think it was Russia who sent them a lifeline. But who knows how long that oil is going to last them? So they're going through it, and we do want regime change in Cuba, according to Marco Rubio. So we'll see how this goes. And I'm be real with you, sounds like kind of like a false flag, because what were American citizens even doing out there? And then shooting at them, and now they got blown up. Now they're dead, and now we got to sit there and investigate the death of U.S. citizens basically, or Cuban residents.
Always Venezuelan oil that has dried up. You mentioned Nicolas Maduro, and of course the United States assault on Cuba as well. It's something that the U.S. wants to focus on. So, give me a sense of the mounting pressure and the humanitarian crisis that's currently unfolding there.
The mounting pressure is the strongest that the current Cuban government has faced in recent history. Cuba does not produce nearly enough of the energy that it needs, and it needs more energy, more oil to produce electricity, to run its factories, to run its city. And that's why we're seeing...
and it's having a fuel problem, which means it's barely able to run its essentials. It's getting bad to the point where shout out to Canada, because Canada pledged $8 million in food aid for Cuba as U.S. fuel blockade continues. So I'm be real with you, we are kind of putting the squeeze on the government while also putting the squeeze on the people at the same time, to the point where there is a food crisis going on there, and to the point where Canada got to send food aid.
Daily blackouts both in Havana and the rest of the island. One of the first reactions coming out of this incident, I think it's important to point out, came directly from the Kremlin, Russia being a close ally of the Castro's government and the current president of Cuba, Rubén Díaz-Canel. This is what Dmitry Peskov, the Russian spokesperson, had to say about the incident in Cuba.
The situation around Cuba, as we see, is escalating. The most important thing now is the humanitarian aspect. Of course, all humanitarian issues Cuban citizens are facing must be resolved, and no one should create obstacles.
So the United States have essentially blocked all shipments of oil from neighboring countries into Cuba. It used to be Venezuela. Maduro was removed. Venezuela is no longer sending crude oil to Cuba. It used to be Mexico. Mexico has desisted to do that after the U.S. pressured the Mexican president. And now Canada and Mexico are sending in humanitarian aid, because, of course, the humanitarian situation could as well rapidly escalate into a crisis. It's a sign, it's an arm wrestle between Washington via Miami and Havana. Of course, I say via Miami because Marco Rubio himself, the Secretary of State, is from Southern Florida. He has long advocated for a regime change in Havana, and he also said that yesterday, saying that the Cuba government should seize power as quickly as possible. The Cuban situation should change as quickly as possible. And we see that increasingly isolated. PESCO, for example, did not offer any concrete.
Now we are offering a little bit of grace. So what was it? So on February 26, 2026, the U.S. Treasury Department announced that oil and gas sales to Cuba may be authorized with the designated use for private sector and humanitarian use, relying on SPC license. Relying on an SPC license. All right, so we're gonna see how that works out for them. In the meantime, I'm gonna find out what that is.
Great help coming down from Russia to Cuba. So a situation that we're monitoring very closely in the days and weeks ahead.
Suffice it to say, it is highly unusual to see shootouts in open sea like that. It's not something that happens every day. It's something, frankly, that hasn't happened with Cuba in a very long time.
We're going to turn now to Mark Puto. He's a White House reporter for Axios. He's done a lot of reporting on the U.S. relationship with Cuba. Thank you for being with us, Mark.
Oh, wow.
Thanks for having me.
So we heard the Secretary of State there say that they're going to want to know more. They're going to do their own investigation. And there are survivors, so to speak, right, who reportedly are in a hospital.
All right. So pretty much what they mean by the SCP license inspection is pretty much saying that, well, they're only going to offer the oil for support of the Cuban people. Like I said, for private sectors and humanitarian reason. And I mean, basically for private sectors, basically whatever we got going on in Cuba, apparently. Honestly, I don't even think we got anything going on in Cuba. So, I mean, hey, at least we're giving it to them for humanitarian reasons. So we can't feel that bad.
So what can the U.S. do here?
That's a great question. What I think the U.S. is going to try to do is conduct an investigation the way the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said. And in the process of doing that, they're going to try to talk to these people. And the question we're going to have is, will Cuba participate or allow the United States to have this investigation in Cuba itself? There's a possibility, I can't assess the probability, that the answer to that is going to be no. And if the answer to that winds up being no, well, we're going to be in the middle of a real tense situation. Things are already difficult on the island. Obviously, the relationship with the United States and Cuba is incredibly hostile and has been for 67 years. The Cuban regime there, it's a totalitarian surveillance state, is really sucking wind, so to speak. That is, things are terrible on the island, in part because of the U.S. embargo and what they call a blockade, and in part because of communist mismanagement.
Of course, U.S. denied any involvement. I mean, I ain't gonna lie. I wouldn't surprise you if they were CIA or something like that, where, you know, we can either confirm nor deny. I mean, I don't know who they are. You all bro, the boat was registered to Florida, but hey, we don't know who they are. We deny any involvement, even though the boat was registered to Florida. Most likely, they're our citizens, but we deny any involvement, though.
So this is an inflection point that could become a very explosive situation, depending on how both sides handle it.
Right. You mentioned the embargo cutting off new shipments when it comes to oil. But I also, as you mentioned this, I'm thinking about the fact that Cuban intelligence hasn't been involved in places like Venezuela. You called it a surveillance state. Are we in a kind of spy versus spy situation here with the U.S. and Cuban relationship?
I mean, we have been for 67 years. The guy who made the spy versus spy comic was famously a Cuban, Provías. So that is part and parcel of the United States.
All right, now let's go ahead and get into the next video here. I believe they ID'd the men and showed their faces and all that good stuff. Let's get into it.
Lorena, thanks. And we continue to piece together those involved in this deadly confrontation. We know 4 were killed and 6 were detained. 2 of those involved are U.S. citizens.
Our team coverage continues with NBC6 politics reporter Hatzel Vela. He's live from the newsroom with more. Hatzel, what can you tell us?
So, Jawan, the Cuban government just released the names of the 4 men who died in the shootouts. On the list, Michelle Ortega Casanova, whose brother spoke to us from Tampa. This is Michelle Ortega Casanova, who lived in Lakeland. The 54-year-old's family says he died in the Cuban boat shootouts. His brother.
Oh, God, do me a favor and double tap that screen, like the video, guys. Let's get more people in the conversation by double tapping that screen. You've got any questions, comments, jokes, or disagreements, I'll be happy to read it out loud. Just $2 and up. Appreciate the support.
Michelle Casanova spoke to us exclusively.
Esta batalla tiene que acabar.
One way or another, this conflict has to end, he said, referring to Cuba. He doesn't justify the means or the action allegedly taken. We checked, and Casanova does not have a criminal record here in Florida and was a registered voter in Michigan, meaning he was a U.S. citizen. This is the list of the men who survived in Cuba.
All right, so yeah, I was right. Most likely a U.S. citizen, but I mean, let's be real though. He could be CIA. And let's be real. Would they really tell us if he was intelligence? Let's be honest. Like, what else are you doing out there? And why were you shooting back at him? What were you doing out there with the firepower to even think you could shoot back at him? Like, I don't know. He could be CIA, guys. I'm just throwing it out there now.
And Casanova does not have a criminal record here in Florida and was a registered voter in Michigan, meaning he was a U.S. citizen. This is the list of the men who survived and Cuban authorities say have been detained. Leordan Cruz Gomez, who also lives in Tampa, is the second American citizen on that list. The government there says their Coast Guard intercepted a speedboat registered here in the state of Florida that was carrying 10 individuals. The Cuban government alleges they were trying to infiltrate the island for terrorist purposes and that they seized assault rifles, handguns, and Molotov cocktails, body armor, telescopic sights, and camouflage uniforms.
I mean, shoot, tell me you CIA without telling me you CIA. Or at least, I don't know, private military contractor. I mean, something. But yeah, those aren't your normal citizens. I'll tell you that right now.
This is Maria de Jesus Galindo, the daughter of Conrado Galindo Sariol, who says they didn't know he was going to do this. They thought the truck driver was working.
El domingo.
Sunday was the last.
Ex-CIA. I don't know. I guess I'm just going on that angle. I don't know. I'm convinced at this point.
Last time his wife saw him. 58-year-old Galindo, who was a U.S. resident, they say, was not a fan of Cuba's government. In fact, he fled Cuba on a boat after being jailed on the island for his anti-government views.
Lugar donde muchas veces los torturaron.
And his daughter says he was tortured while in a Cuban jail. She fears this will.
Okay, so he was an enemy of the government. He came over here. He probably got in with our, he probably got in with our intelligence agency to give us intel on the government. You're going to go on this mission and cause a little bit of trouble in there. He stabilized Cuba. So when we go in there and scoop the guy out, it's no problems. That's probably was the plan. Like, this just has I'll be real with you, this has intelligence that's written all over it. All over it.
Will happen again, or worse, be killed now that he's being detained by the government there.
Para mí es un héroe.
His wife now considers him a hero.
So again, at this point, we know at least two of the men involved are U.S. citizens. The Cuban government says this is not an isolated incident. The U.S. government, by the way, we should tell you, is denying being involved. Valerie Ryan, by the way, joins us live from Little Havana with new details about the man Cuban officials say is in custody, but who's actually in South Florida. Valerie, tell us the story here.
Well, Hazel, just in the past hour, Cuban officials confirmed they were mistaken, saying Roberto Ascorra Consuegra is not in their custody. And we were able to talk with Consuegra ourselves and ask him why he believes he ended up on that list.
José Manuel Rodríguez Castelló.
Wednesday, Cuba's state-run media reported 6 names of people taken into custody after an apparent shootout off the coast of Cuba between Cuban Coast Guards and a Florida-registered boat. One of those names,
Roberto Ascorra Consuegra.
But Roberto Ascorra Consuegra is here in Miami. Consuegra says he arrived in the U.S. in 2017-2018 seeking asylum. NBC6 did find a report linking Consuegra and 3 other men to an escape from an immigration center in the Bahamas. He asked Consuegra why he believes his name appeared on Cuba's list. He said they have the history of his actions in Cuba and here in the U.S. against the Cuban government. Cuban authorities claim those actions were violent. Meanwhile, Cuban officials say aboard that boat yesterday were 10 people, 4 killed and 6 detained. They say the boat was loaded with weapons. The Cuban Interior Ministry says those on board had intentions of terrorism. Consuegra says he doesn't have any knowledge of why this happened, but does know who was involved.
Yo los conozco a casi prácticamente todos. Y son jóvenes igual que yo, son jóvenes que quieren la libertad de su país y ahora en estos momentos son héroes y víctimas al mismo tiempo.
Again, Cuban authorities are saying they were mistaken. Consuegra is not in their custody, and we're still waiting to hear from U.S. officials about what really happened here and what comes next. That's the latest here from Little Havana. Valerie Ryan, NBC6 News.
I mean, man, I ain't never seen nothing that screams CIA so much. It's like, I'm sorry, but those are just not your regular Florida men that's just going out there. They just went out there on a boat, said, F it, we're just going to try to cause, I guess, an uprising in Cuba. Like, there's just no way. I'm sorry. I mean, it's possible, but not probable. It's like, I highly doubt it. But all right, though, let's get on to old girl Hillary and let's see what she's talking about, because she had quite a defense for herself. Really, she just pushed it all off on Bill, which is tough. Because I don't know. I don't think Bill can have the same answers as, oh, just ask my wife. Well, your wife was here, and well, she said to ask your ass. Like,